So now we are up to the year 1693 in the Nine Years' War by Compass Games. And the victory points are at 19. And then the French open up with some victories in King William's War, which reduces the victory point total down to 18. And Marlborough is still leading British, corps in service to the Allied side. Then Noailles is sent to Trier and begins a siege there. Trier will eventually fall to the French. The Villahormasa and the Spanish army march from Bayona to Toulouse, and there's a field battle there, and the French are actually defeated, and they retreat to Montpellier. So the fall of Toulouse is going to give the Allies 2 victory points, which brings it up to 20. The Allies also tried to launch a naval battle in the Atlantic, and the Allies attack the Bray fleet, and but the Allies are defeated, so there's basically no effect from this. And then, as suspected, Trier falls to the French, so this reduces the victory points back down to 19. Then the Spanish, under Villahermosa, attacks the French again in Montpellier, and I think it's Montpellier. And then they are defeated in a tie and fall back to Toulouse. Then later on, I had Villahermosa recover and rally his forces, and he later tries to attack Montpellier again in a field battle, and the French are defeated this time and retreat, and the Spanish capture Montpellier for 2 more victory points. So that takes the total up to 21 victory points. The Austrians are also having a siege in, I think it's Varua, and the fortress is eliminated, and Varua falls to the Austrians. This is another victory point for the Allies, brings the total to 22. And that brings the year 1693 to a close. So we go on to 1694. Hopefully I have an overview picture for this. The Allies have some victories in King William's War, but they don't get any victory points for it. But they do move the index a little bit. And Marlborough passed his role, so he's continuing to lead troops. However, during the events phase, the Battle of Zenta occurred, so I think this has something to do with the Ottoman, the Turks, and the Austrians having to pull off forces to deal with it. So 2 Austrian units are removed permanently, and I think later on this will contribute toward the peace roll. Anyway, the Allies have Eugene, and the Austrians that remain in place go to, I think it is Conco in Savoia, and they open a siege there, trying to get this back into their hands. Then the French have Noailles moves to Namur and opens a siege there. And then Marlborough ends up leading a mixed British force to Dunkirk and opens a siege there. And Eugene continues his siege at Cunco, and the fortress falls, so the Allies recapture this fortress. It's worth 1 victory point, bringing the total up to 23 victory points. However, Austria did lose a step. In Ireland, the French had King James II, I think, move to Derry and open siege there, because it's controlled by the Allies. And Noailles continues his siege at Namur, but that has no effect. Then Marlborough conducts his siege at Dunkirk, and Dunkirk falls, amazingly. And That's 2 victory points for the Allies. They're now up to 25. I mean, and that's like in the level of where they would win at the end of the game, or barely win, but the British did pay with 1 step. The French continued their siege at Namur, and the fort was reduced there down to 0, and the French lose a step from one of their corps. Then King James in Dury continues his siege, and the fort falls. So this gives the French a victory point, bringing the total back down to 24. So we go on to the year 1695, and this time the Allies win some victories in King William's War, and they get a victory point this time for that. So that's 25 victory points now. And Marlborough is continuing to be successful and staying in, William III's good graces. So he's leading the British forces in Normandy. I believe it's Normandy. The Allied have the Navy attack the Bray fleet again, but it doesn't go well. The French actually win this. But I still was able to do a naval move from Edinburgh, and I brought some troops with a leader into Dunkirk to reinforce Marlborough, 2 corps and a minor leader. And then Victor Amadeus in Savoy goes into Nîmes and opens a siege there to try to recapture that. Then the French send Noailles to Paris, because obviously the Spanish are starting to hit the weak back door of France from the south, and also was able to move a corps to Arras with Boufflers. Then the Allies and William move to Ostend and open a siege there to try to get the Spanish Netherlands back under control. Vauban intercepts, and there's a field battle. However, the Allies win. The French lose 4 steps. It's terrible. And the Allies lose a step, and Vauban ends up retreating to Tournai, and Vauban ends up wounded in this battle. So, he's going to the turn track to come back next turn. Then Waldeck moves from Antwerp into Tournai, and the French garrison it there, and the Army B retreats to a fortress along their interior lines. So Noailles ends up being moved by the French to Bouchain to take command of Army B there. And then I had Lorge move to Saint-Quent and then I had another leader, I've forgotten his name, move into Paris. I think it was an unnamed leader. Then William began his siege at Ostend, and he had no effect. Walbach continued his siege at Tournai, and he was able to reduce the fort, and he lost some troops as well. The French are just trying to scramble to figure out how to get control of the situation. They've kind of lost the momentum. So the Allies continue with their siege at Ostend, and they were able to reduce the fortress down to 0. And then the siege at Tournai continues, and this time Tournai falls, and what's left of the French there retreat to Lille. And so the Allies have now captured Tournai. They get 2 victory points, and the VP is up to 27 points. The French did lose a step. The French ended up moving a leader into Lille to try to give it a little bit more control there, while the Allies continued their siege at Ostend. I believe William III's leading this, and this time Ostend falls. And this is, a wealthy area, and it gives 2 victory points to the Allies. They're up to 29 victory points, and it's really not going well for the French. Then the siege at Nîmes continues, and Victor captures Nîmes for another victory point, putting the total up to 30 for the Allies. And the this is kind of how we wrap up the year 1695. Then we go on to 1696. The Allies have won another victory in King William's War for 2 victory points this time. Because of some of the investments, they're up to 32 victory points. Marlborough continues to be in command of his British forces on the coast line of France. And then during the event phase, Vauban dies. So he was wounded last turn. He was supposed to come back, but the event put him out of action. He was older, and let's say he probably died from his wounds. So the Allies send a force from Cologne to Koblenz and open siege there. Then Max Emanuel and a Bavarian force moves from Mainz to Landau and opens a siege there. And then William III marches from Ostend to Lille, and he wants to open a siege there. And it's a tough call for the French. Don't really want to get into an open field battle here. So they decided to risk Lille because it's a level 3 fort. So, I mean, it's a lot of victory points, but it can hold its own. So I left 1 garrison there as the French, and we'll have to see how that turns out. Then the French decided to strengthen Noailles' army. I think it's Army B, by bringing a couple of corps into it through a move. Then Max Emanuel and the Bavarians lay siege to Landau, but it has no effect. William III lays siege to Lille and has some success there. Both sides suffer some losses, but the fort still remains strong at level 2 strength. And then the leader at Koblenz, an unnamed leader, is very successful with the dice, and Koblenz falls back into the hands of the Allies for a victory point, bringing the total up to 33 victory points. The French had Catinat move from Briançon to Montmelian to lay siege there to try to, swing some of the tide back in the French favor. But Max Emanuel is continuing with the Bavarians with his siege at Landau. Again, he has no effect. And William III continues the siege at Lille and reduces the fort yet again. And it's now down to 1 strength. And the Dutch also take some losses in the combat. Then Catinat's siege at Montmelian is successful, and Montmelian falls to the French. So that's a -1 victory point, bringing the total back down to 32 victory points. Then Max Emanuel continues with the Bavarians, and Mainz finally falls. It's a victory point for the Allies, bringing the total back up to 3. And then William III's siege at Lille is also successful, and the fort is reduced to 0. The French corps loses a step as well, and as the garrison, and the Empire take a loss to one of their corps. Then Catinat moves with the French army to Briançon, and then on the 5th round, William III's siege at Lille is finally successful, and Lille falls. Honors of war given to the French corps, which falls back on interior lines. But this fortress is worth 3 victory points. It puts the total up to 36 victory points for the Allies. And so during the winter quarters, this is going to be enough for an auto victory, I believe. So the Allies are going to bring an end of this war in the year 1696 this time. So anyway, that's how this battle shook out. We have an automatic victory. And, one of the turning points I noticed in this game is that when the Spanish started attacking southern France, it shifted the equilibrium. I mean, it put the French off balance, and the French had to kind of waste some actions for damage control. And then bringing Marlborough in from the islands, in landing him, near the Spanish Netherlands really threw the French off balance, and they just never could recover from that. And of course, I had some pretty good luck as the Allies in the King William's War, which is, also adding a few victory points. But it's just the momentum put things way out of control. It was kind of one of the interesting things I experienced in this playthrough, because I'm not a great player, but seeing the momentum shift from the French that were kind of in control to the Allies just sweep. They became like a flood. So it was kind of neat to see that. So anyway, I think this is a very good game from Compass Games, The 9 Years' War, the War of the Grand Alliance. So thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned to my channel if you want to see more gaming content. And I hope you all have a great day.